Eventually, we realize we need to empty our minds to become our higher selves. We need to forget everything we've been taught because we need to calm the mind. We need to facilitate a state of peace. We have to stop the thoughts. We have to remain present. And through presence, we dissolve the ego. Where does the higher self stand? In the middle of the circle. The higher self is staying in the middle of the circle, watching all things take their course. The higher self is not attached. Anywhere else in ego land, you're attached. So let's start at the beginning. When we're born, this is our perspective when we're born. This is where we start. We're facing this way. And we're fed programming to keep our perspectives lower. We're not even supposed to know there's a middle of the circle. We're not supposed to know higher self exists. This is when we're born. We're fed constant programming to keep us in a lower perspective. What do schools do? To be higher self, we must empty our minds and become the observer. We must facilitate a peaceful state. If we want to become one with our cosmic beloved, we must empty our minds. What do schools do? They fill our minds with thoughts. They fill our minds with somebodyness. They make us think we're somebody doing something. They make us think we know. They give us information and then make us think we're somebody and we know. They make us think we have control, all of which are part of the illusion. You think you know? You're limiting your perspective. You're limiting your perspective. You think you know something, you'll never see the rest of it. You think you're in control, you're stuck, you're attached. You're attached to your ego. You think you're somebody doing something, you're attached. You think you're in control, we think we're in control, we can only ever do one thing, and that's what we do. Based off our chemistry, our conditioning, and our level of understanding. We can only ever do one thing. There is no control. Control is part of the illusion. Control, thinking that you're in control and that you're being attached to an outcome, any attachment at all is part of your ego and is going to keep you trapped in lower perspectives in the illusion. So how do they keep us in lower perspectives? They keep feeding us the aggravators because they need us to keep thinking. They don't want us to stop thinking because in the present moment, we dissolve. Every second we're in the present moment and we stop thinking, we're dissolving our ego because we are detaching from our ego. Because to be attached to the ego, we have to keep thinking. We got to keep thinking we're in control. We got to keep thinking we know. So every second we're in the present moment, we're dissolving our ego and we're getting closer to the center of the circle and we are our higher selves. Every second you're present, you're your higher self. So what are they going to do? What are schools going to do? They're going to keep feeding that mind non-stop so you can't stop thinking. So you're always attached to your ego and it becomes a part of you and you think you know. So you'll never have higher perspectives. Not never. Obviously, there are situations that break us out of that and we'll talk about that. So when we're born with like a hard line because of the programming and all the aggravators. They make us think we're somebody. They make us think we know, right? Like most kids are technically, like 5-year-olds are technically geniuses. But guess what? School, they load their minds up. They make them think. They make them think they're somebody. They make them think they know. They make them think they have control. All are which are attachments which keep you in your ego and attached in the illusion. Where's higher self? Higher self is right there in the observer. Higher self doesn't know anything. Higher self knows there is no control. Control is an illusion. Control is to keep you attached. There is no control because we can only ever act based on our chemistry, conditioning, level of understanding. We're nature running off. What is expectation? It's the ego vying for control. There is no control. Well, if you have control, if you think you have control and something doesn't go your way, you're caught, you're attached. So you're going to be limiting your perspective. You're always going to be limiting your perspective. If you think you know something, you're limiting your perspective. you're not going to see the rest of it. But when you're standing in the center of the circle and you're not attached and you know you don't know and you know you have no control, you're the observer. You're not attached. You can see all. You are channeling the divine. You are your higher self. You are God observing itself. That's what it means to stay in the center of the circle and let all things take their course. Anything else, any modicum of control or somebodyness, thinking we're somebody doing something, control, thinking we know, you can't attach yourself to knowing anything because you're limiting your perspective if you do that. You're not going to be, there's always a higher perspective. There is always a higher perspective than the ego. Always. It's God. It's the perspective, the higher self, everything, the universe, God observing itself. That's the highest perspective, the unattached perspective. That's the goal. How do we achieve that? How do we get to the center of the circle? How do we get to the higher self? By presence. By stop thinking. We're all the aggravators they keep giving us our entire life in school, the news, social media, everything that stimulates the cycles, the endless cycles of thoughts. We have to remove those. We have to empty the mind. We have to stop taking in information. We have to reconstitute the mind. We have to retrain the mind through spiritual repetition. I made a recent video. We have to constantly remind ourselves to stay present, to let it all go, because it's all a trap. Anything that keeps you in the cycle of thought is a trap to keep you in lower perspective. Anything that tries to keep you attached, anything that tries to keep you thinking you know or you have control. There is no control. If you think you have control, you're caught. You're in a trap because there is no control. And you're always going to be caught in a lower perspective. You got to give it all up. If you want to be higher self, if you want to do the highest good, if you want to change the world, stop trying to change the world externally. Change the world internally. That's how you become the highest self. You have to give it all up and let God work through you. Become the vessel of the divine creator. I am God's eternal love pouring forth. So, how do we become higher self? We have to remove all these aggravators, all the things that they're using to keep us in lower perspectives, to keep us trapped in the illusion. We have to remove. We have to recognize and remove these things, or else they're just going to keep us down. So what do? Well, we have social media, the news, we have entertainment, we have, popular music, we have X, Y, and Z. We got to remove, we got to start taking those away because we need to calm the mind. If you want to stop thinking, we have to remove the things that stimulate thought. That's how we do it. That's how you become higher self. And we have to become the observer. We have to stop being attached. Every second you're in the present moment, you're your higher self. You're dissolving your ego. You're dissolving your attachments because you're not identifying with your ego. You got to stop identifying with the ego to stop being the ego, to become your higher self. It's hard because you got to remove the aggravators. You got to facilitate a state of peace always. This world is very oppressive, and what it's trying to do, it wants to keep you always in lower perspective. Why? So it can control you and so it can siphon your energy. It wants you in low energetic states so it can feed off of you. So, to sum it up, we're born in an illusion. School keeps us, hardwires us into the illusion, and then by an act of God, our illusion gets broken. Sometimes by trauma, sometimes by other means, and we start to let a little light in. We start to see higher perspectives, and we learn about things like presence and purification. Presence, purification. Facilitating a state of peace, removing the aggravators, emptying the mind. The divine higher self lives in the present moment. We don't need to think, we don't need to plan, we don't need to worry, we don't need to hold ourselves, judge ourselves. We can let it all go. Namaste.